meeting for May 19, 2020. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Kammer,
Here.
Carbonaro,
Present.
Daney,
Here.
Gabrenya, absent, Hopkins,
Here.
Ranky,
Present. President
Wallace.
Here. I'm not sure whose dog that is, but you might want to mute. As usual, in lieu of the Pledge of Allegiance, let's have a couple of minutes of silence just to remember and pray for those who have lost people and that are battling this horrible virus as we speak. Thank you. Moves us to our consent agenda this evening. The consent agenda, all items listed with an asterisk on the agenda will be considered enacted in one motion. There'll be no separate vote or discussion on items on the consent agenda. At this time, does anyone wish to add or remove anything from the consent?
Dr. Gabrenya is on, but she's muted.
Okay. So let the record show that
I'm here.
Trustee Gabrenya has joined the meeting and she's present. All right. Trustee Gabrenya, obviously there's nothing on your board committee. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted, which will include the minutes from the board and committee minutes of May 5, 2020. The consent this evening will also include the bills list from May 19, 2020. The consent will also include under License and Ordinance Committee, Chairman Ranky, strategic plan update.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Kammer, seconded by Trustee Carbonaro. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Kammer,
Yes.
Carbonaro,
Yes.
Daney,
Yes.
Gabrenya,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Ranky.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item on our agenda this evening is the Treasurer's Report. Mr. Treasurer.
Yes, thank you. Included in your packet is the Treasurer's Report for the month of March. Also included is the sales tax report. We did receive $203,051. That was up $21,000 from the same month last year. That's almost 12%. Motor fuel tax report, we received $126,802. 71,586 was from the old MFT allotment. 55,216 was from the Transportation Renewal Fund. So the MFT allotment is down, but the renewal fund has been making up the difference. Now, we haven't seen a reduction in revenue yet. We just started this May. Income taxes was down due to the delay in the deadline for filing income taxes. So we should start seeing a reduction in sales tax going forward in income tax. That's it for the Treasurer's Report.
Todd, I know that there's been a lot of discussions in the groups that I'm amongst, the several during the week, Metro Mayor's Caucus and the DuPage Mayors and Managers regarding the LGDF. Do you have any feedback as to, I know legislature is going to be talking about that this week, and I did get some interesting history. Just back in like 2011, we were at 10%. Now we're down to, I believe, 5. Do you have any feedback as far as what we're expecting for LGDF?
From what I'm seeing, they're not expecting to reduce that. We should be getting the same amount. That's the income tax receipts that I was talking about. It was last year we received about $800,000 in May, which was up a little bit from the prior year. But this year we received $400,000. So we're expecting on the more conservative side to be down about $1 million on the year from our regular $4 million, just from the unemployment situation.
Okay.
So that's where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else have any questions for the treasurer?
Nope.
That will move on to the president's report. I have a few proclamations. First proclamation is National Public Works Week, May 17 to May 23rd, 2020. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the village of Bartlett. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, forestry, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our residents. And whereas the health, safety, and comfort of a community greatly depends on these facilities and services, and whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, is vitally dependent upon the efforts and skill of public works officials, and whereas it is in the public interest for the residents, civic leaders, and children in the village of Bartlett to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest in and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective community. And whereas the year 2020 marks the 60th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, I, Kevin Wallace, Village President of the Village of Bartlett, Cook, DuPage, and Kane Counties, do hereby proclaim May 19 through 23, 2020 as National Public Works Week in the Village of Bartlett, dated this 19th day of May, 2020. And of course, I lost my board packet. All right. And the ever depressing graduation situation for the seniors of our village, those that were anticipating, and the seniors in college that were anticipating a celebration and missing a lot of different events. The Village of Bartlett proclamation recognizing our graduating class of 2020. Whereas due to the coronavirus pandemic, the graduating class of 2020 has already been denied end of year award ceremonies, senior trips, spring athletic events, concerts, and proms. And whereas the additional loss of a walk across the stage in cap and gown for your hard-earned diploma or degree gives you good reason to lament such an unprecedented conclusion to your academic years. And whereas these long anticipated rites of passage may be a casualty of COVID-19, the strength and resilience of you, our amazing graduates, has never been in danger. And whereas during this generational challenge, you not only continue to meet all of the educational requirements necessary to conclude this chapter of your young life, but you successfully pivoted to a new starting line. And whereas the world you face today has changed in ways you never imagined. You are smart, you are agile, and you are creative, and you are far more prepared to shape the future and blaze a new trail than you know. And whereas no matter which opportunities you choose to explore in the months and years ahead, higher education, military service, the start of a job, a trade or profession, just look over your shoulder to see the steady support and unwavering pride of your family, friends, and community as we cheer you along on your path. Now, therefore, I, Kevin Wallace, President of the Village of Bartlett, Cook, DuPage, and Kane Counties, do hereby call upon all Bartlett residents to congratulate our graduating class of 2020 and share in their excitement as they take the next steps on their life journey, dated this 19th day of May, 2020. Yay. I do believe, Paula, we had put together some type of a banner as well, right?
Yes, that should be going up, I believe, this week. I signed off on the rendering of it last week. Scott put that together. We're going to have it in the town center area, so families can stop by and take a picture of that and commemorate a little bit.
Good.
Excellent.
All right. Finally, a transition resolution for the transition plan that we discussed a little bit last week. For this particular item, I would need a motion to approve this resolution and a second, and we'll vote on it.
Move we approve the resolution.
Second.
Moved by trustee Daney, seconded by trustee Camera. Will the clerk please, is there any discussion on it?
No.
The clerk please call the roll.
Trustee Carbonaro,
Yes.
Daney,
Yes.
Cabrera,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Kammerer.
Yes.
Motion carries. With that, I will read the resolution seeking immediate authority to establish a community-specific transition plan to reopen businesses and resume civic activity. And just so everyone knows, there's many, many other villages in the Chicago Metro that are have already or are pursuing this as well. Whereas COVID-19 is a novel, severe, acute respiratory illness that can spread among people through respiratory transmissions and present with symptoms similar to those of influenza, and certain populations are at higher risk of experiencing more severe illness as a result of COVID-19, including older adults and people who have had serious chronic medical conditions. And whereas State of Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker issued a disaster proclamation on March 9, 2020, declaring all counties in the state of Illinois a disaster area under the Illinois Emergency Management Agency Act 20 ILCS 3305/7. And whereas the village of Bartlett and its officials and residents recognize that the Illinois Emergency Act 2 ILCS 3305/1, that's the act, authorizes the governor of the state of Illinois to issue emergency disaster proclamations and confers upon the governor certain enumerated emergency powers after a disaster has been proclaimed that he or she may exercise for a period of not to exceed 30 days per 20 ILCS 3305/7. Whereas on April 1st, 2020, Governor J.B. Pritzker issued Executive Order Number 8, which inter alia ordered residents to stay at home or place of residence. Non-essential businesses and operations must cease. Certain activities prohibited in any form except for essential activities, which include, among other things, outdoor activities so long as social distancing is adhered to, essential travel, as well as food, medical, daycare, and professional services. And citizens must engage in social distancing, which specifically requires citizens to maintain a 6-foot social distance from others. Citizens must wash hands with soap for at least 20 seconds as frequently as possible, must cover coughs or sneezes, and may not shake hands, according to the stay-at-home order. And whereas the governor issued a second proclamation continuing the same COVID-19 disaster and issued an executive order extending the stay-at-home order until April 30, 2020. And whereas on April 30, 2020, the governor issued Executive Order Number 30, easing certain restrictions in the stay-at-home order relating to such as golf, but increasing and adding certain restrictions, such as mandating the use of masks or face coverings, and extended the stay-at-home order until May 30, 2020, the amended stay-at-home order. And whereas while it is undeniable that the stay-at-home order has had a positive effect on reducing the number of cases of individuals contracting COVID-19 and deaths in Illinois, it is equally undeniable that the stay-at-home order has had a devastating financial impact on the businesses and residents in the state of Illinois and of the village of Bartlett. And the extension of the stay-at-home order through May 30, 2020, with the revisions set forth in the amended stay-at-home order, will cause further economic destruction and unlawful violations of residents' constitutional rights. And whereas the Restore Illinois 5-phase regional plan to reopen the state's economy on a limited basis presented on May 5, 2020 will continue to cause further emotional and financial distress for citizens of the state of Illinois and certainly for the village of Bartlett. And whereas under the Restore Illinois plan, the Village of Bartlett is part of the Northeast region and our community is combined into the same region as the city of Chicago. And whereas the experience and impact of COVID-19 varies greatly from county to county, and the majority of the Village of Bartlett resides in DuPage County, and we are trending toward meeting the required COVID-19 metrics indicated in the Restore Illinois plan in a matter of weeks, if not days. And this is in contrast to the city of Chicago and other densely populated areas that could take months to reach these same targets. And whereas the village is continuing its efforts to prepare for any eventuality, given that this is a novel illness and given the known health risks it poses for the elderly and those in serious chronic medical conditions. And whereas according to the Illinois Department of Public Health, reporting for May 14, 2020, Bartlett has 168 positive COVID-19 cases with 1,002 people being tested, and has indicated that of the 3,928 deaths from COVID-19 statewide, 2,694 or 69% have been people 70 years of age or older. Whereas we are also cognizant of the additional strain on public safety and mental health providers addressing the potential danger of increased suicide, domestic violence, and drug abuse due to the factors related to prolonged isolation. And now therefore be it resolved by the President and the Board of Trustees of the Village of Bartlett, Cook, DuPage, and Kane Counties, Illinois as follows. The Village of Bartlett urges the government to immediately allow municipalities to address the needs of their residents and businesses directly and give them approval to move to the recovery phase immediately upon meeting the data points outlined in the Restore Illinois plan. Section 2, the corporate authorities of the village also urge the governor to procure support from the General Assembly before any further extensions, any further extension of the duration of the declared emergency and the governor's emergency powers under the act. In addition, the village urges the General Assembly to discuss the provisions of the Restore Illinois plan so that the concerns and recommendations expressed in this resolution can be duly debated by our local elected representatives. Section 3, the Village of Bartlett urges the governor to work with the legislature and the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity and various regional working groups focused on economic restoration and recovery to develop workable precautions, operational restrictions, and reasonable guidelines and controls for the opening of restaurants, bars, and businesses. Section 4, the Village of Bartlett urges the governor to follow through on his commitment to refine the Restore Illinois plan where merited and consider abandoning the 4 designated health regions outlined in the Restore Illinois plan. Such action would balance sound public health practices with the need to resume strong but safe levels of business and civic activity. Section 5, the Village of Bartlett supports the efforts of the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference to advocate for DuPage County IDPH Area 8 to stand alone. And as the Village of Bartlett is in portions of Cook, DuPage, and Kane counties, we also support the creation of a smaller regional group of IDPH areas 7, 8, 9, and 10. And furthermore, the Village of Bartlett also supports the Northwest Municipal Conference and Illinois Municipal League's position that each of the 11 IDPH areas be allowed to be evaluated individually. The Village of Bartlett also urges the governor to take further actions, which include restoring LGDF levels, expediting payments to municipalities and small businesses, and delaying loan payments due to state agencies. Section 7, severability. The various provisions of this resolution are to be considered as severable, and of any part or portion of this resolution shall be held invalid by any court of competent jurisdiction. Such decision shall not affect the validity of the remaining provisions of this resolution. Section 8, repeal of prior resolutions. All prior ordinances and resolutions in conflict or inconsistent with herewith are hereby expressly repealed only to the extent of such conflict of inconsistency. Section 9, effective date. This resolution shall be in full force and effective upon passage and approval. With that long resolution, we've already voted, so it be resolved, May 19, 2020. All right. Next item we have on our agenda this evening is questions and answers. Anybody have any questions for staff?
Actually, I do, for Dan Dinges, actually. Dan, as you know, we're having an issue with the Beaver Pond in my area flooding over. And obviously it's because we've had an awful lot of rain. But my question is, this pond is set up now with all the work that's supposed to be done to overflow into the detention pond behind Home Depot. And are we not checking that gate or that valve? And are we getting branches or grass or something blocking that? What's going on with that? And how often do we check that grate and that valve?
Sure. There's no valve. It's actually just a weir. So once the water level gets up to a point, it flows to that large pipe and heads to the pond west of Home Depot. And from everything we've seen, it's functioning as planned. I think the problem we had was we had 3 storms, big storms, all within a few days of each other. So things didn't get to drain out between events. So you just had that compounding, filling up the ponds. I mean, all the ponds are up right now. But Beaver Pond is functioning the way it's supposed to. That area with the bike paths being flooded out, that was always part of the plan. That's part of the floodplain for that pond. So when you get these large events, that area will flood. But once the rain stops, it's going to drain down and go back to normal. And it's already starting to come down. We have had issues with the main discharge, which heads south from Beaver Pond, kind of goes through the storm sewer system and crosses a box culvert across 59. West of 59, we've had in the Forest Preserve area beaver activity from time to time. But from what we can tell right now, it looks like that is flowing. We have been in contact with the Forest Preserve, and they are checking it where they can, and they'll continue to check that. It's an ongoing thing that we check with them every year on, just to make sure that channel is, remains open. But everything, I mean, that seems to be flowing fine, and the large pipe and detention pond west of Home Depot are working as planned.
It just seems like every time we have a large storm or we have a lot of rainfall that come in, then the pond comes up and the neighbors get all nervous and we start hearing from them and everything else. I'm just wondering if that overflow, that whatever you want to call it, that area, if it's big enough for that pond. I'm beginning to think it really isn't. And if it was a bigger outlet, the water wouldn't have the tendency to back up into as far as it goes. I'm wondering if we made a mistake here with that.
I don't think, I mean, it's functioning. It's not getting, I've talked to a few, I know Bob was talking to residents today. From the reports that we've gotten, it's gone to the property lines, but it hasn't gone beyond the property lines that we've heard. We'd like to hear from people if it is going beyond, but like I said, that area of where the bike paths are is part of the floodplain. So that's going to be underwater during these large events.
Well, my concern, I guess, is that if we had another 100-year storm or whatever, like we did when everything did flood, and just with 8 inches, we're getting it to go up into people's backyards. What if we end up having, a act of God here, let's call it, and have more than that, more rain come in, and these people actually do get flooded? It's going to be something we could have changed and that we didn't do it.
Well, I mean, it was designed for a 100-year flow, so that's a 60-inch pipe that heads to Home Depot.
Yeah.
I mean, you've designed to what you can afford. I mean, we put in a 100-year pipe. The probability when you talk about a 100-year pipe is a 1% chance. So that pipe is running, full. If we get a bigger storm than a 100-year event, then it will go beyond those banks. But I mean, you'd have to do a whole nother project if you wanted to design it to a 200-year event or whatever year event. Typically, you design for a 100-year event, and that's what it's designed for, and it's functioning for.
Right. I guess I brought up my concerns. That's all I can do.
I'll kind of piggyback on Trustee Kammerer's. Off of Creston Taylor, there was quite a bit of flooding over there, and I recognize that you said that we had 3 back-to-back storms. I know from your email you talked about the project that was done, the FEMA project that was done at Prospect. Was that designed for a 100-year storm?
Yes, same thing. So it's functioning the way it is. Again, that pond filled up with the different events, and Creston Taylor is the low spot. So during those major events, that area, I mean, it was anticipated when you have a big event like that, if that FEMA pond is full, that's where it's going to come up, is at that point. So we know that, and you know, we have our pumps that we can pump down that area. It's definitely both Beaver Pond and this FEMA project is definitely much better than what we had previously, because we know what the other option, you know, what happened previously, and we didn't have that happen in either of these locations. So it's unfortunate, you know, we had another major event, well, combination of events back to back, but that's what it's designed for. It worked.
Yeah, I know. I think some residents in the area of Taylor and Crest, their basements actually flooded. I know people were worried in the Beaver Pond area because the water was extremely high, but I don't think anyone's basements flooded. What could the village do to prevent people's basements from flooding like that?
So we've been working, we had some sewer backups in that area. And we're talking to them about the overhead sewer program, because if they had that program, if it was a sewer backup, that would avoid that from happening. We had several other incidents where people had some pumps go down. That stuff, you know, that's a matter of having backup pumps available and, you know, additional pumpage to be able to dewater.
All right, thank you, Dan.
Yep.
All right, good conversation. Anything else? Hearing none, we will move on to the town hall portion of the meeting this evening. Is there anyone, Chris, that we could identify that has raised their hand or put something in chat that they would like to speak to the board about?
We have one person raising their hand, so I'll unmute him.
Good evening.
Good evening. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Jerry Loeffler at 121 Lucille Court in Bartlett. And my question is if, excuse me, if the I guess you'd call it the decree or your petition is successful and you are able to break out from you know, the region, Northeast region, would there still be mask wearing required in parallel to businesses being, let's say, more quickly opened? That's my question.
Okay. I could defer to Chief on that, but Jerry, just from all of the calls that I participate on, there's evidence on both sides that would suggest that you certainly, when you aren't able to maintain the 6-foot distancing, that a mask should be worn. But I think the IDPH does a good job of confusing people, because even on today's call, she said as soon as you step out your door, you should put your mask on. And I don't, that's not something that would be enforced in Bartlett if you're out jogging or riding your bike.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
In the sense that when my wife and I go out to take a walk, and luckily Bartlett is a low density area, which makes it very nice that sometimes we literally don't see anyone and we easily socially distance from our neighbors. And if so, they or we both move to the side and we carry on. It's going into stores like, for instance, today going into a grocery store that many times distancing is difficult to do. And you see the occasional person without a mask. Well, my attitude is I'm protecting you in a close quartered position by wearing a mask. You're not wearing a mask is basically an assault on me because you're the one then potentially spreading it. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, and certainly we've certainly heard enough information. I mean, even leading professionals in the industry 2 months ago said, no, don't wear a mask. It's not good for you. Now they're saying, yeah, wear a mask. You have to, or it's mandated now by the governor. But I would just to support the governor's words today, and most of the time when he's on, he said, just have one in your pocket. And
I agree.
Yeah.
And Mayor, I would also, I don't know if you were on the same call I was today. We asked about, that one of the caveats in that mask wearing or facial covering is the medical concern that if you are not able to do that for a medical reason, and you can't obviously tell that from just looking at someone, but there may be some medical reason why they're not having a face covering. That also confuses things.
Yeah.
So I think have one handy. We try to keep that as reasonable as possible.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment as well?
Sure.
From a small business perspective, I think it needs, if it becomes such that we become more tolerant of people not wearing masks, which I hope that we aren't, it needs to be understood that it is the business person's right to protect their employees and their other patrons by insisting that patrons wear masks in their business. And so I just want to make that point that small businesses, especially our tiny businesses in town, need to have their patrons have masks on when they're in their buildings, even if the resolution is acknowledged for our village.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Trustee Gabrenia. Thank you for the comments, Jerry. Now, Chris, is there anyone else raising their hand?
There's a question from Mary Connors. It's in the chat. I don't know if you want to read that out loud, Mayor.
June 13th to recognize VHS. So here's we've had some discussion around this, and Mary is asking, I heard the class of 2020 proclamation, but can you confirm the request for a car parade scheduled for June 13th to recognize VHS seniors? And I would just suggest, Mary, that we're in discussions with the chief right now. He's going to be in a meeting tomorrow. So after getting your request, I spoke with a few people on staff, and we'll be getting back to you with some direction and some answers as quickly as possible. But it is in discussions within the village. So.
And Mayor, I would just clarify that the chief is speaking with U46,
Yep.
their staff, and also Streamwood and Carroll Stream police. They're getting the same kind of request.
Yeah. So hold tight if you can. I know your event wasn't going to be until first week in June or so, but we're going to be discussing that throughout the next few days. Anything else, Chris?
Those were all the questions and hands raised.
All right. Moving along, next portion of our meeting is standing committee reports. Building and Zoning Committee, Chairman Hopkins.
Thank you, President Wallace. There's nothing to report under Building and Zoning tonight.
Thank you, Chairman Hopkins. Community and Economic Development Committee, Chairman Gabrenia.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's nothing under our committee this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Gabrenia. Finance and Golf Committee, Chairman Daney.
Mr. President, there's nothing to report this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Danny. License and Ordinance Committee, Chairman Ranky.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing additional under license and ordinance.
Thank you, Chairman Ranky. Police and Health Committee, Chairman Carbonaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing to report under police and health tonight.
Thank you, Chairman Carbonaro. And Public Works Committee, Chairman Kammerer.
Thank you, Mr. President. This evening we have 3 things under Public Works. Let me see if I can pull them up. Let me go to the first one. All right. First item is engineering services agreement with Engineering Enterprises, Inc. for Basin M1 through M7 flow monitoring study. And so with that, I move the village board approve resolution 2020-50,
50.
a resolution approving of the agreement for professional engineering services between the Village of Bartlett and Engineering Enterprises, Inc.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Kammerer, seconded by Trustee Danier. Is there any discussion?
Well, the question I do have with this and with the other 2 other items are, I noticed that, Dan, we've budgeted $800,000 for these. How many other items will there be under the $800,000 budget? Because these 3 things don't come anywhere close to that. And I'm just wondering if there's nothing else budgeted for that, then why are we so off on the budget from what's coming in?
Sure, I can answer that, Chairman Kammerer. What this does is the engineering portion from this, especially the phase 2 item, the third item, from that we'll get a list of actual improvements to make. So sewer lining, manhole lining, all if we have to do illegal disconnects, that type of the actual improvement. So the rest of that money, roughly 600,000, would go towards additional lining in areas that's needed, the manhole lining, service lining, disconnects, that type of thing. So it's actually the actual improvements. This information will tell us where we need to spend that money.
And will the 520,000 be enough to do those improvements?
We don't know for sure yet until we get that information back. I do know there's a long list because, like for instance, M1 through M7, we did M4 lining. We just actually finished in February, March. So there's still a whole lot of clay pipe. We've been lining the clay pipe because we know we have issues there. So there's additional clay pipe to line that is part of our system. So we would put a big chunk towards lining, but then we also want to do some manhole lining and that type of stuff as well. So we kind of look at, when we get these reports, they'll have like severe, they rank them as how severe they are. And we try to get the top, the worst first, and then work our way down the list. So we'd kind of break up the projects according to that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
I just want to thank staff for putting this stuff together. I think all 3 of these projects are well needed. I think they'll definitely help reduce inflow and infiltration. Also help with flooding in people's houses in these particular areas once we discover what some of the issues are. So I just want to thank staff for putting this stuff together, and I don't want to find out bad news, but it's better to fix it now than later.
I agree. With that, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Daney,
Yes.
Cabrera,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Kammerer,
Yes.
Carbonaro.
Yes.
A motion carries.
Next thing we have on the agenda is engineering services agreement with Engineering Enterprises, Inc. for basins N2, E2, and E3 flow monitoring study. I move that the village board approve resolution 2020-51, a resolution approving of the agreement for professional engineering services between the Village of Bartlett and Engineering Enterprises, Inc.
Second.
Moved by trustee Kammer, seconded by trustee Daney. Is there any discussion? Same type of a package deal, so I don't think so, but will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Gabrenia,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Kammerer,
Yes?
Carbonaro,
Yes.
Daney.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And the last thing on the agenda this evening is engineering services agreement with Engineering Enterprises, Inc. for basins N1, E1, and M4 sewer system evaluation survey. I move the village board approve resolution 2020-52, a resolution approving of the agreement for professional engineering services between the Village of Bartlett and Engineering Enterprises, Inc.
Second.
Moved by trustee Kammer, seconded by trustee Daney. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Hopkins,
He's muted.
Yes.
Zerius,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Kammerer,
Yes.
Carbonaro,
Yes.
Daney,
Yes.
Gabrenia.
Yes.
That motion carries.
And thank you, Mr. President. That's all we have under Public Works this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Kammer. Next item on our agenda this evening is the new business. Would anybody like to discuss any new business for the good of the village?
Did you want to mention something about the Memorial Day virtual celebration?
Oh,
or
yeah,
memorial?
absolutely. Maybe whoever was doing that maybe can give us a quick little, and anybody that's listening, and for the record, a quick little update on what you all put together and what to expect and when it's going to be live.
Sure. I can do that. It's going to go live on Memorial Day at 11 o'clock. It will go out over our social media platforms, and it will also be on the cable channel, I believe. And each of you read the names of the veterans that are buried at the cemetery, as we do every year. Mayor, your speech was included, and also the playing of Amazing Grace on the bagpipes like we normally have, and the playing of taps. We have some photos that were included in there, and I will say that Joey Denenberg did a fantastic job being our director on that and putting it together, and Sam and Scott coordinating a whole new kind of Memorial Day for us. They did a fantastic job putting that together. I mentioned earlier that I got to see what I like to call the director's cut of the video, and it looks really great. We had also participation from Pastor Sue and Pastor Flelling, giving the prayers at the beginning and at the end. So we tried to do as much of the program as we could, and Public Works put up the flags and the placards along the roadway extra early so that we could do that. And I know that I've received a lot of compliments and kind comments from residents who appreciate how beautiful the cemetery looks and the effort that PW makes to make it look extra special for Memorial Day weekend. And we had a little extra time this year, so I know people have been up there and are appreciating it.
Outstanding.
Good. Fantastic.
And I have a comment. I'm going to miss the cannon, though.
Yeah. Well, I think it's...
Don't we have a recording?
Yeah, good point.
I think some other villages that I've heard from are doing some type of a car parade. I'm just the one thing that I'm a little leery of are the ones that would typically be at this event that maybe aren't real technically savvy. So I hope that we make it as simple as possible for people to enjoy that, and possibly reach out individually to all the Gold Star mothers and those that the families of those folks that they would typically be there, and just kind of see if we can help them in any way as to how they can tune in and be celebrated.
We will certainly endeavor.
Anything else would anybody would like to share? Questions for staff? With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by trustee Kammer, seconded by trustee Carbonaro. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Kammer,
Yes.
Carbonaro,
Yes.
Daney,
Yes.
Gabrenia,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Ranky.
Yes.
We are adjourned.